You are in my seat, and I suggest you move before security removes you," the man said calmly, adjusting his cufflinks. The woman in the Chanel suit laughed in his face. She looked him up and down, sneering with pure venom. "Listen to me, you affirmative action hire. I paid $5,000 for this flight. I don't move for staff, and I certainly don't move for people like you. Go find a jump seat in the back." She turned away, dismissing him like a fly. She didn't notice the pin on his lapel. She didn't know that the plane wasn't just carrying passengers, it was his property. She had just declared war on Marcus Sterling, the owner of the very airline she was sitting on. And by the time this flight landed, her life would be over. The air inside the exclusive Centurion Lounge at JFK International Airport smelled of roasted Arabica beans, aged leather, and quiet desperation. It was a place where the masters of the universe came to relax before hopping across the Atlantic. But for Marcus Sterling, it was just a place to charge his phone. Marcus sat in a secluded corner, nursing a sparkling water with a twist of lime. At 36, Marcus possessed the kind of stillness that made people nervous. He was 6'3", with skin the color of deep obsidian and broad shoulders that strained the fabric of his bespoke Savile Row suit. He didn't look like a man who needed to shout to be heard. He looked like the man who whispered the final word. He was scrolling through a merger contract on his tablet, the acquisition of Vance Logistics, a mid-sized shipping firm based in London that was hemorrhaging money. Marcus's holding company, Sterling Horizon, was poised to buy them out at sunrise tomorrow. "Excuse me, is there a reason why my mimosa tastes like orange juice from a concentrate?" The shrill voice cut through the hushed atmosphere of the lounge like a serrated knife. Marcus didn't look up immediately, but the entire room shifted. Businessmen lowered their newspapers. A weary mother hushed her baby. At the bar, a woman was berating a young bartender who looked on the verge of tears. This was Victoria Vance. She was a vision of expensive insecurity. Blonde hair teased into a rigid helmet of curls, a white pantsuit that cost more than the bartender's car, and a diamond tennis bracelet that caught the harsh fluorescent lights. Victoria was 45, the daughter of the founder of Vance Logistics, and she wore her entitlement like armor. "Ma'am, I assure you it's fresh squeezed," the bartender stammered, his hands shaking as he held the pitcher. "It's garbage," Victoria snapped, shoving the glass back across the marble counter, so hard liquid sloshed onto the boy's sleeve. "Take it away, and get me the manager. I want to know why I'm paying for premium lounge access to be served cafeteria swill." Marcus watched over the rim of his glass. He knew exactly who she was. He had read her dossier 3 hours ago. Victoria Vance, VP of Operations, known for high turnover rates in her department and 3 pending HR lawsuits for workplace harassment. She was the woman he was flying to London to fire. She, of course, had no idea who he was. To the public, Marcus Sterling was a ghost. He was a private equity titan who stayed out of the tabloids. He owned Airolux, the boutique airline they were about to board, but he traveled under a standard passenger manifest to audit his own cruise. Victoria turned, scanning the room for an audience, her eyes landing on Marcus. He held her gaze for a second too long. She scoffed, loud enough for him to hear. "Unbelievable. They let anyone in here with a credit card these days." Marcus returned his attention to his tablet, a faint, humorless smile playing on his lips. He swiped a finger across the screen, highlighting a clause in the contract regarding executive severance packages. He tapped the edit button and reduced the figure by 50%. Karma, he thought, starts now. The announcement chimed softly overhead. Aerolux Flight 404 to London. Heathrow is now boarding first class and private suite passengers at Gate 4. Marcus stood up, collecting his Toomey briefcase. He moved with a fluid grace, adjusting his blazer. As he walked toward the exit, he had to pass Victoria, who was currently typing furiously on her phone, blocking the main walkway. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice a deep baritone, smooth as velvet. Victoria didn't move. She didn't even look up. She simply angled her shoulder away, forcing him to step around her luggage. "Wait your turn," she muttered into her phone. "I'm telling you, Daddy, the deal is in the bag. These investors are desperate. I'm going to walk into that boardroom tomorrow and demand double the valuation." Marcus paused. He looked at the back of her head. Desperate. He shook his head and continued walking. The walk to the gate was short. Aerolux prided itself on efficiency. The branding was sleek, matte black and gold. It was the airline for the 1%, designed for people who found Emirates too crowded. At the gate podium stood Sarah, a gate agent Marcus had hired himself 3 years ago. She was efficient, kind, and currently looking terrified. Victoria Vance had arrived at the podium first, having shoved past an elderly couple. "I want to board now," Victoria demanded, slamming her boarding pass on the scanner. "And I want to know if you've loaded my special meal request, the gluten-free lobster thermidor." "Ms. Vance," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "We are just finalizing the cabin prep. We will begin boarding in 2 minutes. And yes, the chef has confirmed your meal." 2 minutes? I'm standing here in heels and you're telling me 2 minutes. Victoria rolled her eyes. She turned and saw Marcus standing behind her, waiting patiently in the priority lane. She narrowed her eyes. "You again." Marcus nodded politely. "Ms. Vance." "A pleasure." She bristled. "I didn't give you my name. Are you following me?" "Your name is on your luggage tag," Marcus pointed out, gesturing to the platinum tag on her Louis Vuitton carry-on. "And we are heading to the same destination." "Unlikely," she sneered. "I'm in the royal suite. You're probably in... what? Business? Or did you get a miles upgrade?" She looked at him with a specific kind of disdain that Marcus had encountered his entire life. It was the look that said, "You don't belong in my world. You are here by luck or by charity, but never by right." "I manage," Marcus said simply. Sarah, the gate agent, looked up and saw Marcus. Her eyes widened. She opened her mouth to say, "Mr. Sterling," but Marcus brought a finger to his lips in a subtle shh motion. He winked at Sarah. Sarah understood immediately. She swallowed hard and looked back at Victoria. "Ms. Vance, we are ready for you. You are in seat 1A. "Finally," Victoria huffed. She grabbed her pass and stormed down the jet bridge, the wheels of her suitcase clacking loudly. Sarah looked at Marcus apologetically. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Sterling. I can move her if you want. I can bump her to the next flight." Marcus handed her his boarding pass. "No, Sarah. Let her stay. I want to see how this plays out. Is the cabin crew briefed?" "Yes, sir. Captain Henderson knows you're on board." "Good. Put me in 1A. Sarah paused, confused. "Sir, Miss Vance is in 1A. That's the seat she booked." "Actually," Marcus tapped the computer screen on the podium. "If you check the system, you'll see that 1A is reserved for the owner. Miss Vance was supposed to be in 1B. It seems there was a glitch." There was no glitch. Marcus had just decided that he wanted his usual seat. Sarah typed for a moment, then smiled. "Ah, I see the correction now. You are in 1A, Mr. Sterling. Miss Vance is in 1B. Shall I go down and inform her?" "No," Marcus said, straightening his tie. "I'll handle it. I haven't had a good negotiation in weeks." He walked down the jet bridge, the low hum of the engines growing louder. The tunnel felt like a corridor into an arena. He wasn't just walking onto a plane, he was walking into a lesson, and class was about to be in session. The interior of the Aerolux Boeing 787 Dreamliner was unlike any commercial aircraft. It didn't look like a plane. It looked like a floating penthouse. The lighting was a soft, amber hue. There were no overhead bins in the center, making the ceiling feel cathedral high. The scent of white tea and thyme filled the air. The first-class cabin consisted of only 8 suites. These weren't just seats. They were enclosed rooms with sliding mahogany doors, lie-flat double beds, and 40-inch 4K screens. But the crown jewel was Suite 1A. It was slightly larger than the others, located at the very front left, offering the most privacy and a panoramic view of the cockpit entry and the galley. It was the seat Marcus Sterling designed for himself. When Marcus stepped onto the plane, the flight service manager, a sharp woman named Elena, with impeccable posture, nodded to him. She knew the drill. Treat him like a passenger, but keep the service flawless. "Welcome aboard, sir," she said softly. "Can I take your coat?" "Thank you, Elena," Marcus whispered. "We might have a situation in 1A. Elena's eyes flickered toward the front suite. Miss Vance has already made herself comfortable. Marcus turned the corner. The door to Suite 1A was wide open. Victoria Vance had made herself at home. Her shoes were kicked off, lying in the middle of the aisle. Her blazer was thrown over the monitor. She was already sipping a glass of Dom Perignon, her feet resting on the ottoman that was upholstered in Italian leather. She was on the phone again. "No, I'm telling you, the seat is fabulous. It's the only way to fly. I'll charge it to the company account. Who cares? Once we sell to Sterling Horizon, I'm cashing out anyway." Marcus stood at the entrance of the suite. He cleared his throat. Victoria ignored him. She swirled her champagne. "Excuse me," Marcus said, louder this time. Victoria groaned, pulling the phone away from her ear. She looked up, her face twisting into a grimace of annoyance. "What? Are you following me onto the plane now? Stalking is a crime, you know." "I'm not stalking you," Marcus said, his voice steady. "You're in my seat." Victoria blinked. Then she laughed, a dry, incredulous sound. "I'm sorry, I must have heard you wrong." "Your seat?" "Suite 1A, Marcus said. "It's assigned to me." "Impossible," Victoria snapped. "I booked first class. I always sit in 1A. It's my lucky number. Now go away. You're interrupting my business call." She made a shooing motion with her hand, the diamonds on her wrist flashing. Marcus didn't budge. "Check your boarding pass, Miss Vance." Victoria rolled her eyes with theatrical exhaustion. She fished the crumpled pass out of her purse and squinted at it. "Seat. 1B. She stared at it for a moment. The logic in her brain short-circuited. She was Victoria Vance. She sat where she wanted. 1A and 1B were right next to each other, separated by a partition. To her, they were identical. But to admit she was wrong? To move for him? She crumpled the boarding pass and tossed it onto the floor. "It's a typo," she declared. "The agent said I was in the front. I'm already settled. My champagne is poured. My bags are stowed. I'm not moving." "You are in the wrong seat," Marcus repeated. "And I prefer this side of the aircraft." "You prefer?" Victoria scoffed. "Let me explain something to you. I am a Platinum Diamond member with this airline's partner program. I fly more miles in a month than you probably fly in a lifetime. If you have 1B, it's the same damn seat. Go sit there." "It's not the same seat," Marcus said, "and it's a matter of principle. You are taking something that isn't yours." Victoria's face flushed red. She wasn't used to being told no, especially not by men who looked like Marcus. Men like Marcus were supposed to carry her bags, drive her car, or open doors for her. They weren't supposed to correct her. "Elena!" Victoria screamed. Elena appeared instantly, her face a mask of professional calm. "Yes, Miss Vance. Is there a problem?" "This person," Victoria pointed a manicured finger at Marcus, "is harassing me. He's trying to steal my seat. Tell him to go sit in his assigned seat or have him removed." Elena looked at Marcus, then at Victoria. She took a deep breath. "Ms. Vance, may I see your boarding pass?" "I threw it out. It's 1A. "Actually," Marcus interjected, "it was 1B. I saw it." Elena picked up the crumpled paper from the floor. She smoothed it out. "Ms. Vance, this pass says 1B. Mr. Sterling is assigned to 1A. Victoria's jaw dropped. "Mr. Sterling? You know his name?" "I know all our passengers' names," Elena said smoothly. "Miss Vance, I must ask you to move to your assigned suite. It is just across the aisle. It is identical." "I don't care if it's identical." Victoria slammed her champagne glass down on the tray table. "I am comfortable here. Why should I move? Look at him." She gestured wildly at Marcus. "He's probably on an employee discount ticket, or an upgrade. I paid full fare. Do you know who my father is? He's Richard Vance." The cabin had gone silent. The other 6 passengers in first class were watching. One of them, a tech billionaire from Silicon Valley, was peering over his glasses, amused. Marcus stepped closer. He placed his hands on the edge of the suite wall. He leaned in, invading her space, just enough to establish dominance. "Miss Vance," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave. "It doesn't matter who your father is. It doesn't matter what you paid. The rules apply to everyone. You are in the wrong seat. Move." Victoria stood up. She was shorter than him, even in heels, but she tried to make herself big. Her eyes were wild with rage. "I am not moving," she hissed. "And if you say one more word to me, I will have you banned from this airline. I know people. I know the CEO of this airline." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You know the CEO of Aerolux?" "We're close personal friends," she lied effortlessly. "We had dinner in Milan last month. If I text him right now and tell him a passenger is harassing me, you'll be greeted by police in London." Marcus looked at Eleanor. Eleanor bit her lip to stop from smiling. "Is that so?" Marcus asked. "Yes," Victoria smirked, thinking she had won. "So, be a good boy, take your little bag, and go sit in 1B. Or better yet, go back to economy where you belong. I bet you'd feel more at home there." The insult hung in the air, heavy and ugly. Marcus looked at her. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. "Very well," Marcus said. He turned to Eleanor. "Eleanor, I don't want to delay the flight. The other passengers have schedules to keep." Victoria let out a triumphant huff and sat back down, grabbing her champagne. "Finally, some common sense." Marcus continued. "I will take seat 1B. Elena looked shocked. "Sir, are you sure?" "Yes," Marcus said. He looked at Victoria one last time. "Enjoy the seat, Miss Vance. Get comfortable. But do remember, turbulence hits hardest at the front." He moved to suite 1B, sliding his bag into the storage compartment. He sat down, seemingly defeated. Victoria laughed loudly, pulling her phone back out. "Daddy? Yeah, handled it. Some thug tried to hustle me out of my seat. I put him in his place. Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm on fire today. Nothing can stop me." As the plane pushed back from the gate, Marcus reclined his seat. He pulled out his phone and sent a single text message to his chief legal officer in London. Text to Davidson, legal draft, a breach of contract notice for the Vance Logistics acquisition. Also, prepare a banning order for Aerolux Aviation, worldwide. Name, Victoria Vance. He hit send. The engines roared to life. They were airborne. Victoria Vance was flying high in stolen luxury, drinking vintage champagne, believing she was the queen of the sky. She didn't realize that the man in 1B wasn't just a passenger. He was the pilot of her destruction, and the crash landing was going to be brutal. The cabin lights had been dimmed to a soothing indigo, simulating a twilight sky, but the atmosphere in the front row was anything but peaceful. At 38,000 feet, somewhere over the Atlantic, Victoria Vance was treating the first-class cabin like her personal living room, and a loud one at that. While the other passengers had retreated into the privacy of their noise-cancelling headphones or drifted off to sleep under cashmere blankets, Victoria had kept her sweet partition wide open. She wanted to be seen. More importantly, she wanted to be heard. She had consumed 3 glasses of the vintage Dom Perignon before the meal service had even officially begun. Now, as the smell of truffle oil and seared scallops wafted from the galley, she was tapping her empty flute against the mahogany side table with an irritating, rhythmic clink, clink, clink. Marcus, sitting in 1B, had his partition up, but the barrier was no match for Victoria's piercing voice. He was trying to work. The acquisition of Vance Logistics was a complicated beast. As he reviewed the due diligence reports on his laptop, the irony of the situation was almost suffocating. He was reading a report titled Vance Logistics, Analysis of Toxic Executive Culture and High Management Turnover. And right next to him, the subject of that report was loudly berating a flight attendant. "Excuse me," Victoria barked. "Is the galley staff on a break? My glass has been empty for 4 minutes." Elena appeared instantly, her face composed, but her eyes betraying a flicker of exhaustion. "I apologize, Miss Vance. We were just plating the appetizers. Would you like a refill?" "Obviously," Victoria sneered. "And make sure it's chilled this time. The last pour was lukewarm. I don't pay $6,000 for warm champagne." "Certainly." As Eleanor poured the wine, Victoria leaned forward, her eyes darting across the aisle toward Marcus. She seemed bored, and like a cat playing with a mouse, she decided that pestering the man in 1B was better entertainment than the in-flight movie. "Hey," she called out. "Hey you, Mr. 1B. Marcus didn't look up from his laptop. He highlighted a paragraph about a sexual harassment settlement that Victoria had quietly paid off 2 years ago using company funds. "I know you can hear me," she said, her voice slurring slightly. "Don't be rude. It's bad manners to ignore your betters." Marcus slowly removed his reading glasses. He turned his head to the left. Through the gap in the privacy divider, he saw her. She was flushed, her lipstick slightly smudged, looking at him with a mix of amusement and contempt. "Can I help you, Ms. Vance?" Marcus asked, his voice dangerously calm. "I was just wondering," she swirled her glass. "What could you possibly be working on that is so important? You've been staring at that screen for an hour. What are you? A coder? Data entry? Something clerical?" Marcus closed his laptop halfway. "I'm in acquisitions." Victoria threw her head back and laughed. It was a harsh, jagged sound. "Acquisitions? Please. That's a big word for buying and selling used cars or whatever it is you do. You don't have the look of a shark, honey. You have the look of the bait." She took a long sip of her drink, her eyes glinting. "You want to know what real acquisitions look like? I'm flying to London to close a deal that will make your annual salary look like a rounding error." Marcus turned his body fully toward her. This was it. She was about to give him the ammunition he didn't even know he needed. "Is that so?" Marcus asked, feigning polite interest. "A big merger?" "Huge," she bragged, waving her hand dismissively. "We're selling the family business. Vance Logistics. Ever heard of it? Of course you haven't. It's B2B, high level." "And you're selling it?" "To some investment firm called Sterling Horizon," she said, saying the name of Marcus's company with a distinct lack of respect. They are desperate to get into the European shipping market. We've got them by the balls, honestly. Their CEO is some recluse billionaire who throws money at anything that moves. We're going to bleed them dry. Marcus felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. It wasn't fear. It was the distinct sensation of a predator watching prey walk into a trap. Sounds like you don't have much respect for the buyer, Marcus observed. Why should I? Victoria scoffed. They're just the checkbook. I'm the brains. Once the ink is dry and I get my payout, I'm staying on as a consultant. They can't run the ships without me. I own the relationships with the dock workers' unions. If they try to fire me, I'll paralyze the ports. Marcus's eyes narrowed. She's threatening to sabotage her own company post-sale. This was actionable intelligence. This was grounds for terminating the deal or renegotiating the price down to zero. That sounds risky, Marcus said softly. Blackmailing your new owners. It's not blackmail, it's leverage, she corrected him, looking at him as if he were a slow child. That's how business works in the real world. Not that you'd understand. You probably think hard work gets you places. She laughed again. It's adorable. Just then, the food arrived. Elena placed a tray in front of Victoria. It was a masterpiece. Butter-poached lobster tail with a saffron risotto and shaved asparagus. Victoria looked at it and wrinkled her nose. What is this? She demanded. The lobster thermidor you requested, Ms. Vance, Elena said. Victoria poked the lobster with her fork as if it were a dead rodent. It looks rubbery, and I said light sauce. This is drowning in cream. Did the chef die and leave the dishwasher in charge? I can assure you, it was prepared by our onboard chef, Jean-Luc, Elena said, her voice tightening. Take it away. Victoria shoved the tray. It smells cheap. Just bring me the cheese plate, and more bread. But not the hard rolls. The soft ones. Elena took the tray, her hands shaking slightly. Marcus saw the humiliation in her eyes. He knew Elena. She had been with Airlux for 5 years. She was a single mother who worked double shifts to put her daughter through university. She didn't deserve this. As Eleanor passed Marcus's suite, he caught her eye. He gave her a small, reassuring nod. Hold on, the nod said. Just a little longer. He turned back to his laptop and opened a new email draft. To Board of Directors, Sterling Horizon. Subject, urgent, Vance Logistics acquisition. Status, halt immediately. He didn't hit send yet. He wanted to see how far she would go. You know, Victoria called out again, her mouth full of bread she had demanded. You never told me your name. Not that I'll remember it. Marcus, he said simply. Well, Marcus, she smirked. Enjoy your little chicken or whatever they serve in the cheap seats of first class. When I land, I'm being picked up by a private driver. Maybe if you ask nicely, I'll let you carry my bags to the curb. Marcus smiled. It was a terrifying smile, though Victoria was too drunk to notice. I suspect, Marcus whispered to himself, that when we land, carrying bags will be the least of your worries. 3 hours had passed. The cabin was dark, save for the blue glow of the mood lighting and the harsh white glare of Victoria's reading light, which she refused to turn off despite the passengers behind her shifting uncomfortably. The alcohol had taken a heavier toll. Victoria was no longer just loud, she was belligerent. She had moved from champagne to red wine, and the heavy tannins had stained her lips a dark, bruising purple. Marcus had put his work away. He was now watching her. He wasn't hiding it anymore. He sat with his arms crossed, observing the train wreck unfolding in Suite 1A. Victoria was struggling with the in-flight entertainment system. She was jamming her finger against the touch screen with increasing violence. Broken, she shouted into the silence of the sleeping cabin. "This piece of junk is broken." Eleanor appeared out of the shadows within seconds. "Miss Vance, please keep your voice down. The other passengers are sleeping." "I don't care if they're sleeping," Victoria hissed. "I want to watch The Crown and this stupid screen is frozen. Fix it." "Let me reset it for you," Elena said, reaching over. As Eleanor leaned in to tap the reset sequence on the bezel, the plane hit a pocket of clear air turbulence. It was a sharp, sudden drop, maybe only 20 feet, but enough to cause a stomach-lurching sensation. Elena lost her balance for a fraction of a second. Her hand brushed against Victoria's wine glass. The glass didn't shatter, but it tipped. A wave of dark red Cabernet Sauvignon splashed onto the sleeve of Victoria's pristine white blazer. Time seemed to freeze. Victoria looked at her sleeve. The red stain was blooming rapidly across the expensive fabric like a gunshot wound. She looked at the glass. Then she looked at Eleanor. The silence was broken by a scream that curdled the blood of everyone on board. "You stupid cow!" Victoria jumped up, shoving Elena backward. Elena stumbled, catching herself against the sweet wall. "Look at this!" Victoria shrieked, grabbing her lapel and shaking it at the flight attendant. "This is a $4,000 Armani suit. You ruined it. You clumsy, incompetent idiot." "Miss Vance, I am so sorry. It was the turbulence," Elena stammered, grabbing a cloth napkin to help. "Don't touch me." Victoria slapped Elena's hand away. The slap was loud. It wasn't a punch, but the contact was undeniable. Skin against skin. Assault. The cabin was awake now. The tech billionaire in 2A sat up, looking alarmed. "I am going to have your job," Victoria was screaming, her face contorted with rage. "I am going to sue this airline into the ground. Do you know who I am? I will destroy you. I want your name. I want your employee number. And I want the pilot here right now." She grabbed the empty wine glass and looked ready to throw it. That was the moment Marcus Sterling stopped being a passenger. The sound of a seatbelt buckle clicking open was sharp and decisive. Marcus stood up. He didn't rush. He unfolded his frame to his full height, looming over the partition. He stepped into the aisle, placing his body between Victoria and the terrified flight attendant. He caught Victoria's wrist just as she raised the glass again. His grip was iron. "That," Marcus said, his voice low and vibrating with suppressed thunder, "is enough." Victoria froze. She looked up at him, shocked that someone had dared to touch her. She tried to yank her wrist back, but he didn't let go. "Let go of me!" she spat. "This help assaulted me. She ruined my suit." "She tripped," Marcus said coldly. "And you just committed federal assault on a flight crew member. I saw it. The cameras saw it. And everyone in this cabin saw it." He released her wrist with a shove that sent her stumbling back into her seat. "Sit down," Marcus ordered. "Don't tell me what to do." Victoria rallied, her entitlement overriding her survival instinct. "You're a nobody. You're just some diversity hire flying on points. I own this situation. I know the owner of this airline." Marcus stared at her. The cabin was dead silent. Even the hum of the engines seemed to fade. "You keep saying that," Marcus said, stepping into her suite, invading her territory. "You keep invoking the owner's name like a shield. Tell me, Victoria, what is the owner's name?" Victoria blinked. She faltered. I don't have to tell you." "Is it because you don't know it?" Marcus stepped closer. "Is it because you lied?" "I didn't lie," she screeched, desperate to save face. "He's a close friend. He'd be disgusted if he saw how I was being treated." "Disgusted is certainly the word," Marcus said. He looked at Eleanor. "Eleanor, are you hurt?" Eleanor shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm fine, Mr. Sterling. I'm fine." Victoria's head snapped up. Her brain processed the sound. "Mr. Sterling." She looked at Marcus. Then she looked at the branding on the menu card on her table. Aerolux Aviation, a Sterling Horizon company. The color began to drain from her face, leaving her pale beneath the heavy makeup. The connection was slow, firing through the haze of alcohol, but it was happening. Sterling Horizon, the company buying her father's business, Marcus Sterling. The CEO she had called a recluse and a checkbook. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No, that's a coincidence. Marcus reached into his inner jacket pocket. Victoria flinched, thinking he was reaching for a weapon. He pulled out a black leather wallet. He opened it and extracted a heavy metal business card. It wasn't paper. It was black titanium with gold lettering. He dropped it onto her tray table. It landed with a heavy thud right next to the wine stain. Marcus Sterling, Chairman and CEO, Sterling Horizon. Aerolux Aviation. Victoria stared at the card. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her hands began to tremble. Marcus leaned down, his face inches from hers. His voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. You asked earlier what I do, Marcus said. You asked if I was a coder or clerical staff. He straightened up, adjusting his cuffs. I don't buy used cars, Victoria. I buy mistakes. And right now, I'm looking at a very expensive one. He turned to Eleanor. Captain Henderson needs to be informed. We have a level 3 threat in the cabin. Physical assault on a crew member. I want the police waiting at the jet bridge at Heathrow. Yes, sir, Elena said, her voice finding its strength. Wait! Victoria scrambled up, panic seizing her throat. Wait, you're him? Marcus Sterling? Marcus didn't look back. Sit down, Miss Vance. The seatbelt sign is on. Please, she begged, grabbing the edge of the partition. I didn't know. I was stressed. The merger. My father. We can talk about this. I'm the VP of Operations. We're going to be partners. Marcus paused. He turned his head slightly, giving her one last profile view. Partners? Marcus chuckled darkly. Victoria, by the time we land, you won't even be employable at a fast food restaurant, let alone my partner. He walked back to seat 1B and sat down. The rest of the flight was silent, but it was the silence of a tomb. Victoria Vance sat in the seat she had stolen, in the suit she had ruined, realizing that the 3,000 miles across the ocean wasn't a journey to a new fortune. It was a long, slow descent into hell, and the man sitting 3 feet away held the keys to the gates. The remaining 4 hours of the flight were a study in psychological suffocation. The cabin of the Dreamliner, usually a sanctuary of hushed luxury, had transformed into a high-altitude prison cell for Victoria Vance. She sat in the ruins of her own making. The wine stain on her white Armani blazer had dried into a stiff, brownish bruise, a physical brand of her shame. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the metal business card hitting the table. Marcus Sterling, Chairman and CEO. She looked across the aisle. The privacy partition to Suite 1B was raised, a solid wall of matte grey blocking her view of the man she had insulted, belittled, and tried to evict. She could hear the faint, rhythmic tapping of his keyboard. He was working. He was calm. He was continuing with his life, as if she were already a ghost. Victoria tried to bargain with the universe. Her mind raced through scenarios, spinning webs of denial. It won't be that bad, she told herself, her fingernails digging into the leather armrest. He's a businessman. He cares about the deal. He won't jeopardize $100 million acquisition over a spilled glass of wine. I'll apologize. I'll cry. Men hate it when women cry. They fold. Daddy will smooth it over. Daddy always smooths it over. She reached for the call button to summon Eleanor. desperate to send a note of apology to Marcus, but her hand froze. She remembered the look in Marcus's eyes. It wasn't anger. It was indifference. He had already discarded her. The cabin lights shifted from the deep indigo of sleep mode to a soft, warm sunrise orange. The smell of fresh coffee drifted from the galley, but no one offered Victoria a cup. The service had stopped for Suite 1A. It was a subtle freezing out. She was no longer a passenger. She was cargo. "Ladies and gentlemen," the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, sounding grave. "This is Captain Henderson. We are beginning our initial descent into London Heathrow. The weather in London is a dreary 12 degrees with heavy rain." The captain paused. Usually, this was where they thanked the passengers for flying Aerolux. "We have been asked by ground control to hold our position at the gate upon arrival for a security protocol. We ask that all passengers remain seated with seatbelts fastened until the authorities have cleared the aircraft." The blood drained from Victoria's face. Authorities. Across the aisle, the partition to Suite 1B lowered slowly. Marcus Sterling appeared. He looked immaculate. His suit was uncreased, his tie perfectly knotted. He looked refreshed. He turned his head and looked at her. It was the first time he had acknowledged her existence in hours. "Miss Vance," he said, his voice devoid of mockery, which made it terrifyingly serious. "I suggest you tidy up. The British press can be quite unforgiving with their photography." "Marcus." "Mr. Sterling," Victoria's voice was a croak. "Please, I'm terrified. Can't we just talk about this in the car? I'll resign. I'll do anything." "You'll do exactly what the law requires," Marcus said, turning away to look out the window at the grey sprawl of London rising to meet them. The landing was smooth, but to Victoria, it felt like the wheels hitting the tarmac were the gavel striking a judge's bench. The plane taxied for what felt like an eternity, finally coming to a halt at Terminal 5. The seatbelt sign pinged off. Immediately, the other passengers in first class began to unbuckle. The tech billionaire in 2A stood up to grab his bag. "Please remain seated," Elena's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. The cabin froze. The forward door opened. The cool, damp air of England rushed in, mixing with the recycled cabin air. Heavy boots thudded on the jet bridge. 2 officers from the Metropolitan Police walked onto the plane. They wore high-visibility yellow jackets over their uniforms. Behind them was a man in a plain suit, Detective Inspector Graves. He looked tired and unamused. "We are looking for a Ms. Victoria Vance," the inspector announced. Victoria shrank into her seat, pulling her ruined blazer tight around her. She wanted to dissolve. She wanted to wake up in her bed in Manhattan. "She is in Seat 1A, Marcus said calmly, not even looking up from his phone. The inspector nodded to Marcus, a gesture of recognition, and walked over to Victoria. "Ms. Vance?" "Yes," she whispered. "I am Inspector Graves. I am arresting you on suspicion of common assault against a flight crew member and endangering the safety of an aircraft under the Aviation Security Act." "It was an accident," Victoria cried out, tears finally spilling over. "I slipped. It was turbulence." "You can explain that at the station, madam. Please stand up." "Do I have to?" She glanced at the handcuffs on the officer's belt. "Stand up, please." Victoria stood. Her legs were shaking so badly she had to grab the seat back. The officer stepped forward, took her wrists, and clicked the handcuffs into place. The sound was loud in the silent cabin. Click, click. The humiliation was absolute. The tech billionaire was filming it on his phone. The elderly couple in row 3 were shaking their heads in disgust. "This way," the inspector said, guiding her by the elbow. As they shuffled her toward the door, she had to pass Marcus. He was standing now, collecting his briefcase. She stopped. The police officer tugged her arm, but she dug her heels in. "Marcus," she sobbed. "Please, my father! Call my father!" Marcus looked at her. He looked at the handcuffs. He looked at the wine stain. "I intend to," Marcus said. "I have a meeting with him in 1 hour. I'll be sure to tell him why you're late." "Move along," the officer ordered. Victoria Vance, the heiress to a logistics empire, was marched off the plane like a common criminal. As she stumbled down the jet bridge, the flashes of paparazzi cameras exploded at the terminal window. Marcus had been right. The press was waiting. Marcus waited until she was gone. Then he looked at Elena. "Take the week off, Elena, with full pay, and check your company account. I've authorized a bonus for hazardous working conditions." Elena smiled weakly. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling." Marcus buttoned his jacket. "Don't thank me. Just make sure the wine list is updated for my flight home. I think we're done with the Cabernet." The headquarters of Sterling Horizon's London branch was located on the 45th floor of the Shard. The conference room was a glass box floating in the sky, offering a panoramic view of the rain-swept city. Richard Vance stood by the window, looking down at the Thames. At 68, Richard was a man carved from granite and old money. He wore a double-breasted suit that hid his paunch, and he smoked a cigar despite the building's strict non-smoking policy. He felt untouchable. In his mind, today was a victory lap. He was selling his company for $250 million. He was going to retire to the south of France, and his daughter Victoria would stay on to run the day-to-day operations under the new ownership. He checked his gold Rolex. 10:15 a.m. "Where the hell is she?" Richard muttered to his personal lawyer, a nervous man named Simon. "Victoria should have been here 30 minutes ago. She landed at 9. "Maybe traffic, sir," Simon suggested, shuffling papers. "The rain is quite bad." "She's probably shopping," Richard grunted. "That girl can't walk past a duty-free without buying perfume she doesn't need." The heavy oak doors opened. Richard turned, putting on his best master-of-the-universe smile. He expected to see a team of lawyers. Instead, Marcus Sterling walked in alone. Marcus carried no luggage, no entourage, just a slim leather folder. He looked fresh, energized, and dangerous. "Mr. Sterling," Richard boomed, stepping forward with his hand extended. "The man of the hour. Good to finally meet the face behind the emails. I trust your flight was comfortable." Marcus didn't take the hand. He walked past Richard and placed the folder on the long glass table. The sound of the leather hitting the glass echoed in the large room. Richard's hand was left hanging in the air. He slowly lowered it, his smile tightening. "I see we're dispensing with pleasantries. Fine. I like a man who means business." Marcus pulled out a chair at the head of the table, Richard's usual seat, and sat down. "Sit down, Richard." It wasn't a request. Richard bristled. "Now look here, son. I know you're buying the shop, but until the ink is dry, I am still the chairman of Vance Logistics. That is my chair." "Sit down," Marcus repeated, his voice dropping to that subterranean rumble that made the air vibrate. Richard hesitated, then sat in the chair to Marcus's right. He exchanged a worried glance with Simon. "Where is Victoria?" Richard asked, trying to regain control. "She was on your flight, seat 1A. She's supposed to be here to sign the operational transition papers." "Victoria has been detained," Marcus said, calmly, opening the folder. "Detained? By who?" "Customs." Richard scoffed. "Did she bring in too much caviar? I can make a call." "She is in the custody of the Metropolitan Police at Heathrow Airport," Marcus said. The silence that followed was absolute. The rain lashed against the glass walls. "Police?" Richard's face went slack. "What are you talking about?" "Assault," Marcus said. "She physically attacked a crew member at 38,000 feet. She was intoxicated, she was abusive, and she attempted to assault a fellow passenger who intervened. That's preposterous, Richard sputtered, his face turning red. Victoria is high-spirited, yes, but she's not a criminal. It's a misunderstanding. Who is the passenger? I'll pay them off. How much do they want? 10,000? 50? Marcus looked at him with pity. You can't pay him off, Richard. Everyone has a price. Richard slammed his hand on the table. Who was the passenger? Me, Marcus said. Richard froze. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You? I was in seat 1B, Marcus said, because your daughter refused to vacate my assigned seat of 1A. She spent 7 hours insulting me, berating my staff, and explaining to me, in great detail, how she planned to sabotage Sterling Horizon after the acquisition. Marcus slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a transcript. She told me, Marcus continued, his voice icy, that Sterling Horizon was just a checkbook. She said you had us by the balls. She said she would paralyze the ports if we tried to manage her. Richard picked up the paper. His hands were shaking violently. He read the words. He recognized his daughter's cadence. He recognized her arrogance. It was the arrogance he had taught her. Marcus. Mr. Sterling, Richard stammered, the fight draining out of him. She was drunk. It was plain talk, bluster. You know how it is. I know exactly how it is, Marcus said. I run a global aviation empire, Richard. I don't tolerate abuse of my crews, and I don't tolerate fraud. Fraud? You presented Vance Logistics as a stable company with strong leadership. Your VP of operations, your key asset, is currently facing a felony charge and a lifetime ban from every major airline alliance. She is a liability. She is toxic. Marcus closed the folder. The deal is dead, Richard. Richard stood up, panic seizing him. You can't do that. We have a letter of intent. If you walk away now, our stock will crash. The rumors alone will bankrupt us. I'm not walking away, Marcus said softly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a new document. He slid it across the table. I'm renegotiating. Richard looked at the document. His eyes bulged. This is half the price. You're offering 125 million. That's robbery. That is the price for a distressed asset with no operational leadership, Marcus said. Take it or leave it. If you leave it, I release the video of Victoria screaming racial slurs at me and slapping a flight attendant to the press. The video is in 4K resolution. It will go viral in 10 minutes. Richard Vance slumped back into his chair. He looked old. Suddenly, very old. He realized he wasn't a master of the universe. He was just an old man who had raised a spoiled child, and now the bill had come due. And one more condition, Marcus added. What? Richard whispered. Victoria is out. No consultancy. No golden parachute. No severance. She is terminated for cause, effective immediately. She is not allowed within 500 feet of any Sterling Horizon property, which includes this building. Richard looked at the rain streaking the window. He thought about his retirement in France. He thought about the bankruptcy that awaited him if he said no. He picked up the pen. She's my daughter, Richard said weakly. Then perhaps, Marcus said, standing up and buttoning his jacket, you should have taught her that the person sitting in the seat next to her might just be the one who owns the chair. Richard signed. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply took the contract, checked the signature, and placed it in his folder. A pleasure doing business, Richard. Security will escort you out. I believe you need to go bail your daughter out of jail. I hear the traffic is terrible. Marcus turned and walked out of the glass room, leaving Richard Vance alone in the grey light of London, staring at the ruins of his legacy. 6 months later, the rain in London hadn't stopped, but for Victoria Vance, the storm had moved indoors. The video of her meltdown on Flight 404 hadn't just gone viral, it had become a cultural touchstone. Titled First Class Failure, the 4K footage of her slapping Elena and screaming at Marcus had garnered 40 million views in 3 days. The internet, unlike a courtroom, offered no plea deals. She was a pariah. Victoria stood outside the sliding glass doors of Heathrow Terminal 5, but this time she wasn't holding a first-class boarding pass. She was holding a plastic bag containing her personal effects from the police station evidence locker. She had pleaded guilty to common assault and drunk and disorderly conduct to avoid jail time. The judge, a stern woman who had clearly seen the video, handed down a sentence that hit harder than prison: 500 hours of community service and a 3-year probation order. But the real sentence was the one Marcus Sterling had orchestrated. She tried to hail a black cab. 3 drove past her. 1 driver slowed down, looked at her face, recognized the woman from the news, and sped off, splashing puddle water onto her jeans. She wasn't wearing Armani anymore. She was wearing a tracksuit she had bought at a discount store. Her phone buzzed. It was a notification from her bank app. Account frozen. Insufficient funds. Her father, Richard, had kept his word. The sale of Vance Logistics to Sterling Horizon had gone through, but the Vance name had been stripped from the branding. It was now Horizon UK. Richard had taken his millions and retired to the Côte d'Azur. But before he left, he had a final meeting with his daughter. "You cost me $125 million, Victoria," he had said, refusing to look her in the eye. "I'm setting up a trust for your children, should you ever have them. But for you, you're on your own. Learn to work. It builds character." Shivering in the cold, Victoria walked toward the bus stop. She had to get to a hostel in Camden. Her Kensington apartment had been seized to pay legal fees, and the civil settlement she had paid to Elena to avoid a lawsuit. As she waited for the N9 bus, she looked up. Across the street, a massive digital billboard lit up the grey skyline. It was an advertisement for Aerolux Aviation. The image was sleek, powerful, and humiliating. It featured a photo of the new first-class cabin. Sitting in Suite 1A, looking out the window with a calm, commanding presence, was Marcus Sterling. The slogan faded in below his image: Aerolux, where class is defined by character, not price. Victoria stared at the face of the man she had called a diversity hire. He looked like a king. He had taken her seat, her company, and her dignity, without ever raising his voice. The bus pulled up with a screech of brakes. It was crowded, smelling of wet wool and exhaust. Move down inside," the driver shouted. Victoria stepped on. She fumbled for her change. "Exact change only, love," the driver snapped. I don't have it," she stammered. "Then get off. You're holding up the line." A young woman behind her, a student with a heavy backpack, sighed. "Here," the girl said, tapping her card on the reader. "I got it." Victoria looked at the girl. She looked like the bartender Victoria had yelled at in the lounge. She looked like Elena. "Thank you," Victoria whispered, her voice breaking. "Just move back," the girl said, indifferent. "You're blocking the aisle." Victoria Vance, the former heiress of the sky, shuffled to the back of the bus. There were no seats left. She grabbed the greasy handrail and held on tight as the bus lurched forward into the traffic. She was standing, and for the first time in her life, she realized she was exactly where she belonged. And that is how the flight of a lifetime turned into a one-way ticket to rock bottom. Victoria Vance learned the hard way that money can buy a first-class ticket, but it cannot buy class. She judged a man by the color of his skin and the quietness of his demeanor, never realizing that true power doesn't need to scream to be heard. Marcus Sterling didn't just win the business deal, he taught us a lesson that applies to every single one of us. Whether you are a CEO or a student, a janitor or a pilot, respect is the only currency that matters. When you try to strip someone else of their dignity, be careful. You might just be handing them the keys to your own destruction. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice served, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you have done if you were Marcus Sterling? Would you have been as calm, or would you have kicked her off the plane immediately? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. I'll see you in the next video. Stay humble and fly safe.